Hello, everyone. My name is Jake from StreetSmart Insurance, and I'm conducting this interview on behalf of the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing the Chief Operating Officer, Joe Hutelmyer. Joe started his insurance journey over 40 years ago, beginning as a product manager. From there, he went on to roles in which he was the president of very many organizations, such as Seaboard Underwriters and Amwins. Aside from his role in leadership, he's also a mentor. Joe has educated many students, myself included, on the intricacies of truck insurance. I am what you would call a transportation risk specialist, TRS for short. I've been in the insurance business for 16 years. Please don't do the math. I was introduced to MCIEF via Tommy Ruke at a company gathering. At a young age, I thought I knew all that needed to be known about insurance. Of course, I was mistaken, and after the meeting of panically calling my office to make sure we had all the certain procedures in place, I looked further into MCIEF. Not only did I learn more about the truck industry, I networked with other like-minded agents and vendors, and even more, I established lasting relationships. Why I like Joe and chose to interview him first is because he's devoted to educating insurance agents about the trucking industry. With that said, let's get to it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. A little bit about who you are and what type of influence you have in the industry.
Influence in the industry. That's interesting. I've been around for a long time, and maybe because of that, you have some degree of influence. How I got into writing trucking business. I was a casualty underwriter with a Hartford, and then moved it on to home office of an insurance company that's no longer around as a product manager for commercial auto. And the guy that hired me out of college had come down to North Carolina to Seaboard Underwriters, which was a trucking MGA. And he'd been calling me up and asked me to come down. I went down, I met him, offered me a job, and it was like, okay, do I want to move to North Carolina from Pennsylvania? And, the timing was right. And I did. And, the first thing I said to him when he wanted to interview me, I said, Bill, you can't make money writing truck insurance. It's not possible, because the companies that I worked for in the past never did, and I went down there and I didn't know in 1981 that 40 years later, I'd still be writing truck insurance. And, it was an evolution, where I went from an underwriting VP to the president of the company to owning the company and then selling it to Amwins Group, and I was employee like number 78, and now they've got 6,000 employees. So, we kind of got in on the ground floor, but they left us alone. We ran our shop. They allowed me to do some things where was very involved with the AMGA, got to be president of the AMGA, was on their board for years, ended up being chancellor of their university, worked with Tommy a whole lot because he was doing all the AMJ trucking classes. And actually, I met Tommy in the mid 80s. And, personally, I'm married. I've got 10 grandkids, 5 kids, 10 grandkids. Hutelmyers don't have girls, but we've got 2 girls, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I don't golf. I don't fish. I played basketball and baseball up until I was in my 50s. My knees don't let me play basketball much anymore, but I've got a golden retriever that makes me walk about 5 miles a day. So I stay in shape, but life is good. Can't complain. Do some travel. All of my good friends, all my best friends are all in the business. People I've known for years. Some of them competitors, that were good competitors over time. We could probably go to any city in the United States and have a place to stay just because we know somebody there, which is awesome. And that's one of the things that I think this industry, people don't understand about this industry, that it is a people industry. And then when you look at our segment, at the trucking part of it, it's even smaller. which is one of the great things about our conference. It's like a reunion. It's like a family reunion when you go, because anybody that does truck insurance is there.
Is there any specific topic you think that might be interesting about the trucking field in general that maybe agents can perhaps help address motor carriers with?
Shoot, there's so many things,
So,
and it's funny because it's like my brain's exploded. I get so many publications now to come up with my in case you missed it. So I'm reading probably 100 articles a week. And you're right. I mean, everything from autonomous vehicles, and I'm really not talking completely autonomous, but with all of the safety features that are out there now, with 360-degree vision, no mirrors, all cameras, you got the forward and rear facing cameras, you got the lane deviation, you got so many different things. I mean, that's hot topic. Cyber is a hot topic,
big time.
and growing every day. And I've heard in the past couple weeks of a couple different instances where motor carriers got hit on the cyber side. And
Wow.
something that one was theft, where they basically logged into the motor carrier's site, and brokers sent an email about a load. The motor carrier said, "Yeah, I accept the load," and they basically went and picked up the load, saying that they were the motor carrier, and the load has not been found, and most likely will not be found.
Wow.
Second one that we saw somebody use ransomware and shut down a motor carrier's operation. It wasn't a huge motor carrier, but I think they asked for $24,650 in Bitcoin.
Not traceable.
And they didn't have insurance, and they didn't pay, and they were shut down for a couple weeks. And for motor carrier to basically be shut down for a couple weeks, I mean, that's a lot of revenue to try to make up. And what's happening now is they're not only getting their foot in the front door, but then you catch them, but then they're getting into your backup. And so you lose everything, whether it's in the cloud or anywhere. So that's another hot topic. But driver shortage is big, and that's not going to go away. And you look at the SAFE Act that's out there now. You look at the limits. I mean, limits is probably as big an issue. If the motor carrier is required to carry 2 million limit, what's that going to do for the small guys? It's going to put them out of business. And that's something that I don't think people realize. I don't think our legislators realize, the cost involved, but it's also going to shrink the market, our insurance company market, because a number of them are not going to be able to do 2 million. If you've been unprofitable or barely profitable, or your returns are minimal, at $1 million limits, and you see all these nuclear judgments going on out there, what the cost of reinsurance is going to be. It's going to be really tough. I mean, it's, what are you going to charge for that second million? Somebody said another 50%. I've heard another 100%, depending on the market. And these guys, they're just not going to be able to afford it.
No, this like you said, Joe, the small guys who's getting beat up. And it's funny because I think I could be completely off with the statistic, but owner operators, I think, make up for what, 90% of the entire trucking market, north of 90%, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I guess they're going to have to lease on if that does go through. But you really would be kicking the small guy. And like you said, even the markets that specialize in owner operators, they're not even turning a profit. How would they be able to afford to pay out the additional exposure? So it's interesting times, especially I think with the one law that was being even passed in California. I forgot the law. Yeah, so I know that even here in Jersey, that's been in talks of doing that. You know, a lot of people were calling me up for workers' compensation policies recently. So I know that there are a lot of it's a very dynamic market, but there's a lot of changes going on altogether throughout it.
Yeah, I just saw Connecticut has a per mile tax now on motor carriers. I mean, and it's been proposed in Texas. I think it was shut down, but I know it's been proposed. And, you start talking about adding 10 cents a mile, to these truckers. And that's another thing. How are they going to afford it? And they're going to have to pass the cost on.
Hmm.
And who's going to ultimately pay? You and I ultimately pay for
Hmm.
this. Um,
Look
but
at your gas prices. I mean, there's a shortage of people or a shortage of drivers to transfer fuel to these some of these gas stations now.
Mhm.
So that just all comes back to us. Supply and demand of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we probably should address or at least talk about is the new Safe Act where they're talking about 18-year-old drivers,
Hmm.
and how are we going to insure them, and can we insure them, and where are they going to end up? They're going to end up going to the larger trucking companies, that have the safety programs, that have all the controls in place that the law is going to require, which is going to be great for our industry 5, 7 years from now after these guys hire on with somebody and eventually will go out on their own. But for the first 5 or 7 years, we're going to make the big guys bigger,
Pretty much.
um, and the little guys will pretty much be struggling to keep going. So it's tough. I mean, it's our job, and I think one of the good things about the conference, Jake, is all of the topics we're talking about are all going to be addressed. You
Hmm.
know, everything that's current, that's happening now, is going to be addressed, and it's going to be addressed from different perspectives. From the attorneys to the motor carriers to the insurance carriers. How are we going to do this, or what effect is it going to have on us? What effect is it going to have on our insureds? And that's the cool thing about the conference. I think that's what everybody enjoys about the conference.
Let me ask you this, Joe. I'll back up a bit. What got you into the foundation? Like, was this something that were you one of the founders of it? Did you join Tommy? How did that all materialize?
I was around from the beginning. I didn't. I mean, Tommy. It was Tommy's brainchild. It was Tommy's idea. It was Tommy's. I mean, there were a core group of us that pretty much were around from the beginning. All people that have been involved in trucking and pretty much involved with Tommy in one way or the other, over the years. And when we talked about getting it off the ground, the idea was, okay, there's no other education out there for motor carrier insurance, so let's give it a shot and see. And in all honesty, there's no way in the world that Tommy or any of us envisioned that it would be as big. But no, I mean, I got involved. I was teaching trucking classes with Tommy for a long time. And Tommy's an interesting guy because I was teaching classes with him, but whenever I came up with something that I didn't have a clue where to go to, it was like, okay, got to call Tommy up.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know, it was kind of a natural progression for me. And I've been slowing down somewhat over the last number of years. And, I went from working 70 hours a week to 60 hours a week to 50 hours a week, and
Yeah.
then when they wanted to bring me on here, they said, oh, probably 20 hours a week, and that'll do it. And I probably worked 45. So the 20 hours a week bit didn't work out, but I love what I do. We got good
Sure.
people. Tommy's teaching me a lot. Now we're sharing teaching classes, and you know, um, as long as I jump into my parts real quick, and keep Tommy from jumping in over me, then we do good. But we just spoke at the Florida Big Eye Convention a week and a half ago, and we had really really good reception. We had a lot of people there, and we team taught the class, and it was good. We're looking to do some different things, and it's exciting times for us. I mean, it really is.
Well, let me ask you then. I mean, let me look at the other side of the spectrum. Were there any doubts about doing this? Were you ever apprehensive about going in and committing yourself to this?
No, not at all. No,
Good.
the people, the core group that started this were solid. They'd all been around. It was company people, MGAs, and some retailers, all truck specialists. And I think when you got a good core of business people that know and understand business as well as our segment of the marketplace, I I don't think I expected it to be quite as successful as it is, where we had 600 and some people at the conference 2 years ago. And quite frankly, I really didn't think we'd get 500 virtually last year, and we did. So, when you look at that, no, I didn't think we would be this successful, but I thought that there was a need. And if there's a need and you do a good job meeting that need, I think you're going to be successful.
So with that, then knowing that there was a need for it, what is something you really wanted to get out of the foundation itself? It could be anything, Joe. Aside from the knowledge, let's say, because I know we touched on that a bit. What is something, given where you are now, and you're bringing more and more agents on? What do you really like to get out of the foundation? What is like your bigger vision for it?
I mean, I just think we need to be.
Tough
Boy,
question. I know
no, it's not it's a good question, and I think there's so many different things. You know, I personally love the fact that we get a huge group of people that compete with each other,
Mm.
in one place, and they get along, and they're competitors, but they also share something. They share a unique segment of the marketplace, and I think it's a big deal. Like I said, it's really neat for me personally to see people some that I've known for 40 years at the conference, and some that I've known for 6 months. You know, I enjoy. I enjoy teaching with Tommy, and after the fact, hearing from somebody saying, "Hey, that was really good." I had no idea all that I didn't know. And or they really enjoyed it. They enjoyed the classes, or it was the best classes that they've gone to. Stuff like that. That's the type of thing that kind of gets me excited.
Joe, a bit about what I learned. It would mean, as a younger guy when I got into the industry, you think you know it all, and it's I passed the test, and that was the minimum, I guess. And learning from not only when I originally met Tommy, but even you when we went to class, how humbling it was to know what you don't know, and know that you don't know, for that matter, and always being educated each and every day. And to kind of even go a bit outside of the trucking vertical, let's say, or line of business, we look to implement within our own agency the same type of practice for a homeowner or contractor. So these strategies that I've been putting together that I think other agents could benefit from learning at the foundation, they can also implement similar strategies and safety precautions for the other insurers that they entertain as well. 'Cause I don't like to think of it as solely being unique to just the trucking market itself, and that's what I've learned quite a bit from all of you.
Well, two points. Number one, most of the CICs that attend our conference are not Wheels people, and
Uh,
the feedback we get from all of them is very positive from the standpoint. I didn't realize this. I didn't think about this coverage. I didn't think about this exposure. So that's something that maybe, like you said, it's not our specific focus, but what we offer also can help other people, which is kind of neat. But the second thing is, I'm learning every single day. I
Unbelievable.
mean, it is, I mean, you think, okay, yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years. I'll talk to Tommy in the morning and he'll bring up a case or something. And I'll say, wait a minute, that's not right. And then all of a sudden he starts quoting stuff. And like I said, you'd be amazed at how many attorneys call us up, that want to know our interpretation of things. And, I mean, we are kind of a one-stop shop and probably get at least one call a day, sometimes two calls a day from people that have a question, have a concern, had never seen something before, or somebody, my insured told me this, is this true? Or my freight broker won't allow my trucker to do this because of this. Is that true? Or how do you get Nucor to approve, how do you get my certificate of insurance? So I mean, little things that that we've been there.
Well, let me ask you, what's the craziest claim you've, like, whether, when you're working up in the field or even now, what's the craziest claim you had to deal with?
Wait, there's been a few. I'll tell you the craziest trucking exposure we had was we wrote an insured that actually hauled traveling rock and roll shows.
Okay.
And you try to insure Kiss with all the pyrotechnics.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting risk. As far as the losses go, I mean, we've had some weird ones over time. The most expensive one, personally, was we took the tip off of the blades of a Russian helicopter that the CIA had brought into the port of Baltimore on a ship, and they had the orange cones out, but they weren't out as far as the blades of the helicopter. And apparently the metallurgy is different over in the Soviet Union over here. And the cost to replace about 1.5 inch tip on a blade was going to be about $800,000.
Oh boy! So I mean, that's a lot of cargo there.
It's a lot of cargo for a real small loss. But we've had cattle dumped, we've had chickens dumped, over time. We've had spills, Coke syrup, lard. We had a truck that was full of lard and dumped the lard onto a field, and the cattle ate the lard the week before they were supposed to go to market. They all ended up having diarrhea. Their weight went down as a result of eating the lard, and they were suing us for the difference in what the cattle were going to be valued at versus what they were actually valued at.
I want to ask if there was any payout there, or if there, but
There was no payout, but it was an interesting case.
very interesting. I mean, I was going to even ask what the weirdest type of cargo you've insured, but I think you've touched on just about every one there. What would you tell yourself, Joe? 5 years ago. If Joe now were to talk to Joe 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, what would you say to yourself?
With respects to MCIEF, or with respects to life?
You know what? I want to know more about the life. I think what would you say? Because your own words of wisdom, let's say, and any agent that's maybe watching this that is kind of on the grind, trying to build their agency, maybe needs or wants to learn more about this specific industry. If you were in their shoes, knowing what you know now, what would you say to your past self, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I guess the biggest thing is life is short.
Mm.
And we all spend an awful lot of time at work, and you got to love what you do. And if you don't have passion and love what you do, find something else. I love what I do. I love the people I'm working with. I've always loved the people that I've worked with, and it makes getting up out of bed and going to work not a big deal. The second thing is life work balance. A lot of people, and for a while there, I got caught up in it too, where I was working 75 hours a week and not being home as much as I needed to be. You just got to set your priorities straight. Work's important, but family is more important, and make sure you've got a good work-life balance. And that's something that I've really encouraged my people. When I was managing a group, is you don't have to be here till 9 o'clock at night. Get home. You know, if you got to work late, then go home, have dinner with your family, see your kids, put them to bed, and then work for an hour. Work for an hour and a half. But I think they're the two biggest things. I'd say enjoy what you do. If you do, you'll be successful. And in our business, I always say this, that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be successful. Just got to work harder than the next guy. I was a 2.3 GPA in college. I spent more time on basketball court than I did looking at books. And as a result, my grades showed it. But you just work hard. You keep your reputation. In our business, again, that's another thing that's gold. If you got a bad reputation, it'll follow you for 40 years. Mm-hmm. And it just don't cut any corners. And I probably gave you more than you wanted to hear.
Joe, that was awesome. And what? I think a lot of us can relate to our watching this, myself included. Good work-life balance. You just have to be a hard worker for the most part. That gets about 80 to 90% of the job done. You know. But maintain your relationships, but of course your reputation, I think was most important. And speaking of relationships, how do you think the conference itself? What would you say compared to any other conference you may have been to? How's the MCIEF's conference as far as that in comparison to other conferences? What you learned and how you networked with other people, overall assistance in your own career. How would you compare them to, again, just a different conference in general?
I think number one, I mean, and I've been to I was very involved with AMGA, very involved with WSIA, very involved with NAPSLO, and a lot of the agents conferences. And I think the one thing that you take out of it, well, two things. Number one, it is an educational conference. Where you get potentially either 12 or 16 hours worth of CE education that is specific to your livelihood. It's not generalist. It's not something that you're just taking a course, to get your CE so that you can maintain your license. It is something that is specific to you. To the same extent, you look at the people that are there. And when I was a wholesaler, an MGA, it was awesome for me because all my markets were there and all my retailers were there. So rather than traveling around the country, because we operated in 48 states, 49 states, I could see all of my retailers in one place. Mm-hmm. I could see all my markets. I could visit with them. I could catch up with them. I could introduce new members of my team to my markets, new members of my team to my agents. I think from a retail agent's standpoint, all their markets are going to be there. All the wholesalers that they do business with are there. It gives them an opportunity to be more than an email name. It gives people a chance to put a face and put some kind of background behind, the emails that you're getting every day. Sure. And I think that's important. So I think it's, like I said, in our segment of the industry, if you don't go, that you're really missing out.
Absolutely. And as a newbie, Joe, when I went to the conference and even the classes and heard the arguments, at first it could be intimidating, honestly. But when you see that everyone is there for the same common cause, they want to learn too, and they are in some respects equally as intimidated as well, or open to wanting to learn more information. Everyone, you tend to just mesh in, especially after one or two drinks. That does help with
It
that.
doesn't hurt at all.
No, it doesn't. But it's an awesome. It's really cool to know that someone in Ohio or someone in Arizona or someone in the other part of the country is not so much different from you, and
Exactly.
they're there for the same thing that you are, and that's why I think the conference in itself has taught me so much, and I'm chomping at the bit to learn more and obviously get to the next conference. Let me ask you something too, Joe. If you had to sum Tommy up in 2 sentences, and you can take your time on this one, how would you do it?
I think I already mentioned it. Number one, he's the Energizer Bunny. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he goes 100 miles an hour all the time. He just doesn't. Now, granted, he walks slower than he did before. He shuffles a little bit, but once you get him going, he's just Tommy. And so I would say Energizer Bunny and encyclopedia of insurance knowledge for trucking business.
That sounds just about right. That's, I think, the best way to sum them up. Joe, it's as always been a pleasure speaking with you. Hopefully we get to see each other at the conference coming up soon, or hopefully we go see each other at class sometime.
Looking forward to it, Jake. You take care.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.